Okay, thanks so much. So, good afternoon, members, officers, and any members of the public who may be watching on the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Overview of South Cambridgeshire District Council. So, my name is Richard Williams, and I am chairing this meeting. We don't have a vice chair at the moment, but hopefully we will soon, so I will come back to that shortly. I will introduce other attendees to the meeting when I invite them to speak. Could I just remind committee members that you should have before you the main agenda for the meeting and any supplementary items you should have been sent. Those in the chamber are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed. Now, this is the first meeting of the new Scrutiny and Overview Committee, so I wouldn't propose to do this in every meeting, but I thought it might be nice if we start by going around the chamber for the members of the committee who can just introduce themselves, say their name, and say which ward they represent. We won't do it every meeting, but I thought it would be good to start with that. So can I start with Councillor Scantlebury and go that way around, please?
Hi all, I'm Councillor William Scantlebury representing Bar Hill.
Hello, I'm Councillor Yasmin Dieter representing Cottenham and Rampton.
Hello, I'm Councillor Gio Sebastian representing Histon Impington.
I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm a leaver. Go for it.
Hello, Councillor Michael Booth representing Camborne.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Biggs.
Mark Lunn, and I represent Shelford Ward.
Hello, I'm Councillor James Hobro and I represent Foxton Ward.
Okay, thank you very much. So the normal procedure at Scrutiny and Overview Committee meetings is to review and make recommendations to Cabinet by affirmation. Only those members of the committee present in the chamber will be able to move and second motions or to affirm. However, members present virtually may speak in the debate, and any other members who are present in the chamber who are not members of the committee will also be entitled to speak, but after committee members have had their say if they wish to. May I remind those who are joining us remotely to please ensure that your camera and microphone remain off unless you are addressing the committee. And for those of us who are present in the room, please ensure your microphone is close to you and speak clearly when addressing the room. Finally, a report of this meeting will be presented to Cabinet at its meeting on the 23rd of June. Okay, so you will have noticed I don't have a vice chair. So the next thing we need to do before we move on to any other items on the agenda is to elect a temporary vice chair of the committee for this meeting. So I would like to propose Councillor James Hobro as the vice chair. Would anybody like to second?
I'd be very happy to second that motion, Chair.
Are we happy to accept that by affirmation? Agreed? Agreed. Congratulations, Councillor Hobro. Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is apologies for absence. So do we have any apologies?
We've got 2 apologies for absence. That's from Councillors Paul Bear Park and from Councillor Amber Thomas. We've also had apologies for lateness from Councillor Laura MacLeod and Councillor John Jeffreys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next item is declarations of interest. So do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any business on the agenda of this meeting? Okay, that looks like no. So if any interest subsequently becomes apparent during the course of the meeting, then please would you raise it at that point. So item 4 minutes of the meeting on the 5th of March. Do members have any suggested amendments relating to the accuracy of the minutes of that meeting? Now I know that there are, I think, only 2 members of the committee in the room who were actually members of the committee in that meeting, which is me and the vice chair. Oh no, actually no, Councillor Hansraj was as well. But any comments, or are we happy to accept those minutes as they are presented? Okay, in that case, I move for approval of the minutes as a true and accurate record. Can we all affirm that? Are we all happy to agree? Great, thank you very much. Wonderful. Okay, so the committee therefore agrees and approves of the minutes held on the 5th of March. Okay, so the next item is public questions. We've had one public question which came in and was accepted as a public question. Unfortunately, Mr. Datta is not able to be in the meeting. So what we've agreed is that I will read out his question. I will then say a few words in reply to that question, but we will supply a written answer in response to that question. Okay? So the question from Mr. Datta was, given the decision relating to the Northstowe Faithland concerns publicly owned community asset with significant long-term implications for Northstowe, will the council publish sufficient detail about the scoring, moderation and assessment process to allow residents and bidders to understand how the recommendation was reached before the Cabinet makes its final decision? With this in mind, I'm especially interested in how the council intends to ensure that the assessment process is fully transparent and can be independently understood by residents. Please can you clarify when all documents used in the assessment process, including moderation records and scoring rationale, will be made publicly available before the Cabinet decision? What independent oversight exists to review concerns regarding the assessment process if questions about transparency remain unanswered? So that was Mr. Datta's question. What I would say in reply is that obviously we are the Scrutiny and Overview Committee, so we aren't responsible as a committee for the release of documents, but I think we've all heard the questions that Mr. Datta has posed, and we will be discussing the report on the Northstowe Faithland in some detail, and I think members will have heard those questions, and those issues may well be things that members feel compelled to follow up in the debate that may follow. Does the Cabinet member wish to make any comments?
If you'd like me to give an answer, I can give one now.
If you want to add anything, that would be great.
Okay, it was just to say that this land was provided by the developers through Section 106 to mitigate the impact of Northstowe and benefit the local community. So we know it is a really important decision, and that is why the council developed the community and faithland allocation policy using feedback from faith and voluntary group representatives. So it is vital that we now follow that policy, which Scrutiny assessed in February 2020, and then it was adopted by Cabinet in March 2020. So by following that policy, we are being fair and equal to all bidders. So to be clear, the policy means that each bid was assessed against the assessment matrix and not against one another. Bidders were provided with their overall scoring before the report for Scrutiny was published. Further feedback on the breakdown of scoring under the 6 headings of the assessment matrix will be made available to applicants on request within the window for appeals. Again, this follows the agreed policy. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. That's very helpful. Okay, so there were no other public questions received that met the criteria for the committee, so we will arrange for those answers to be communicated. Now, in our pre-meeting, we did agree, and I think we should probably stick to that agreement, that we would vary the order of the agenda, given that we had a public question relating to what is on our agenda, item 9, and we agreed that we would move that up to item 6 and take that as our next item. So I propose that we stick to that agreement. Are members happy that we vary the item and take Northstowe as the next item? Agreed? Excellent, okay. Thank you very much. So let's move on then to this item, which is item 9 in our pack, which is allocation of faith and community land in Northstowe Phase 1. Now, members have all seen the report which has been provided to the committee. Are there any comments that the Cabinet member or any officer would like to make on this report? If not, we'll go straight into questions and discussion, but happy to hear any comments or clarifications from officers or Cabinet members if they wish to, but they don't have to. Yes, Councillor Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to just give a brief intro if that's acceptable. So this item relates to awarding the first of 4 pieces of land for faith and community groups in Northstowe, and it follows a year-long bidding process and technical assessments of those bids by a panel of officers. So South Cambridgeshire District Council ran the allocation bidding process according to its agreed policy on awarding faith and community land. This policy was developed in consultation with faith and voluntary group representatives, and like I said just a few minutes ago, was assessed by Scrutiny and Overview and adopted by Cabinet. The policy sets the criteria for the assessment of these bids, and these include the status of the applicant as a charity, evidence from an association with Northstowe, evidence to support the need for the proposal, and the likely benefits of the scheme to Northstowe residents, including the wider community. So this is really important because it is a Section 106 award to benefit those in Northstowe. And then the second part of the criteria is the technical evidence around the applicant's ability to deliver their proposal, which of course is again very important to make sure that that land is made best use of by the community. So I just want to say that the policy sets out how all of this is assessed, and that policy was followed. I do have details on that if you want me to go into the details of following the policy, but I'll leave it for now if that's all right. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Redrup. Yes, that might come out in the questions. Okay, so members, do I have any questions that members would like to raise or comments on this report? Councillor Booth.
So I think, first of all, I'd just like to start by saying that I genuinely think that the officers have followed the process duly as they're instructed to do. My question is just that ahead of the next allocation and bidding process, will there be a reflection on the process and the policy itself?
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody, officers or cabinet members, be able to respond to that? Councillor Redrup.
Thank you again. So as I said before, we do have a clear and robust policy and process that we're following, and that we should continue to follow that to ensure we are fair and equal to all parties. But this is the first time that we have followed this policy. It's been quite a big project, and of course we want to review it as part of any good practice. So I'm very supportive of us doing that, as we do want to make sure we continually improve in everything we do.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish to ask any questions or make any comments? I've got just a couple of questions, which I'll start with if there are no other members. So paragraph 12 and 13 of the report, there is reference to Carter Jonas being commissioned to undertake a valuation of the site. What is the valuation of the site? Because I don't think the detail of that is in the report. Do we have any officers? Yes, sorry.
Yes, we do have that Red Book valuation, and it was deemed exempt when it was discussed by Cabinet ahead of the bidding process being opened. That was in December 2024.
Okay, so exempt in the sense of not disclosable.
Well, I'd just like to take advice from the monitoring officer whether that should be disclosed at this point.
Sorry, thank you. The issue here is commercial sensitivity. This was discussed as an exempt item at Cabinet for the reasons that we were still going through the bidding process, and the way that the land is going to be transferred isn't going to be reflective of the commercial value of the land for the purpose that is for community use. So that's why at the moment we're not putting out the valuation, because it doesn't actually affect what the land is going to be used for.
Okay, thank you. I did sort of a follow-up question to that, and then I'll move on to some other members. I may come back with some other questions. So it might be more difficult to answer this question therefore as a result of that, but it says in paragraph 13 of the report that the council needs to seek permission from the Secretary of State to dispose of the land at less value. So I was just unclear really about what that process involves. So is it that the Cabinet is not legally able to make this disposition until there is consent from the Secretary of State? The process would be, if the Cabinet were to make a decision, then it would have to go and be ratified by the Secretary of State. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, so we would make the minded to decision, and then would wait for clarification from the Secretary of State.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll move on to some other members. I think we've got Councillor, if we have no other members of the committee, we've got Councillor Heather Williams.
I'm happy to go after committee members if you've got anybody else on the list.
First in the queue, so...
Oh, am I? Well, there we are. I just wanted to, it's in two places in the report, and if it is somewhere and I've missed it, then I hold my hands up. The matrix is very clear about the weighting, but obviously things in the matrix are also subjective to the individual. So we're giving weighting and those sorts of things. What I can see the bids, what I can't see is what the scoring is for the matrix. We've got the overall, but how it is. So where could I find that information if it's not here?
Okay, so we have all the information that officers are able to disclose under the policy and the procedure that we're going through at the moment. But to try and address your point about subjectivity of those points, that's why there was a panel of officers used. So 8 separate officers, including 2 external, all assessed each bid separately against the assessment matrix. And that was done all independently, so they weren't together, so they couldn't bias each other or influence each other. And then once they'd all done their scores, they came together for a moderation meeting. So everything that could be done to try and limit bias and influence was done to try and reduce subjectivity. Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
So if I can gauge, because I didn't mention bias, anything that I can gauge from here is we don't have the scores in the report. So they're available, we could have them, but you're not disclosing them in this report. Is that what's being said here?
So according to the policy, the applicant has the right to apply for those scores for their own bid during the appeal process.
But as a councillor, we can't see it?
That's my understanding, but I think that is a legal question, is that right? That we should perhaps refer to the monitoring officer?
Happy to take it on pink papers if it needed to be, but surely how can you assess and scrutinise if you haven't actually got the results of that process?
Our job here today is to... Oh, sorry, Chair. Is it okay to come?
Should we bring in the monitoring officer at that point?
Thank you very much, councillors. The policy is quite clear that the scoring will be available, as Councillor Redrup has said, during the if the applicant or the aggrieved party asks for an appeal, that would be when we'd be able to put that out. We can put it as a part 2, and that was explained to the chair in any event he had asked. It was quite late. I think it was Tuesday that the discussion was had. We could have done it in part 2, and that was a suggestion that was provided to the chair, and there wasn't a follow-up, but it can be provided as a part 2.
So, Chair, if I'm...
yes, go on, Councillor Williams, one more.
So the rules say about if the party wants to see their scoring, they can. Is there anything in the rules or the policy that says that councillors of the Scrutiny Committee cannot be provided the scoring in their report? Because the Scrutiny Committee has a legal right to information, and surely, even if it was on pink papers, they should have that before the document today.
That is...
Monitoring officer?
Sorry?
So, monitoring officer, did you want to reply to that?
I don't believe that question was particularly phrased in that way. There was a discussion about the scoring, and there was a response.
Sorry, Chair, my question,
Williams,
not somebody else's, my question is this.
I am answering your question. So in terms of the scoring, that wasn't directly requested by Scrutiny as a whole. It was a question that was asked, could we have it? And there was a discussion between myself and the chair, and there wasn't a further request for the scoring. But I've said to you already, it can be provided on the pink paper.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Redrup, did you want to come
Yeah, if it's
back
okay
on
just
that?
to come in, I'd just like to point out what our role here is today. So according to the policy, it was the role of officers to assess the applications and to come up with the scores and to give us the recommendation, which is what has happened under the policy. Today it's our job, well, your job, I guess, as scrutiny members, to think about whether you think that policy has been followed appropriately and whether it is acceptable to recommend to Cabinet that they accept the officer recommendation to continue with the leasehold agreement. You know, I'm not sure that, in my opinion, you would need to see all of the details of everything that's happened to be able to make that determination. You know, this has been a big procurement exercise. and it's been handled appropriately by independent officers. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just come in at this point. Then I know Councillor Hobro wants to ask some questions. Actually, tell you what, is there another councillor who wants to come in before me? Councillor Booth, did you want to come in on that? Or not? I've got your name on my list.
I mean, I think I've already asked my specific question, but I guess what I would say to the point around disclosing scores is ultimately, as Councillor Redrup said, we've delegated that authority to officers. Do we trust in them to do that job properly? But as I say, our job here is to look at that report and do we feel that the process has been followed? So I think, if anything, disclosing scores we may review it with our own biases and how independent can we be relative to the officers, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure that it necessarily fixes the problem, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to say, given that it was raised, that I did raise this on Tuesday. I think my concern was that if we look at the summaries that we have, and I'm afraid I don't have pack pages on my printed version, but it's page 29 of the officer summary. I'm not sure what page of the bundle that is. But in Appendix B, we've got the officer assessment of the recommended bid. That's 151 words long. Now, I assume that the value of the land, at least in commercial terms, that's being disposed of here is significant, hence the need for the Secretary of State's consent. But we are proposing that the Cabinet makes a decision of that significance on the basis of a 151-word summary, which doesn't include much detail. So I will be honest that I'm not making any comment about the substance of the assessment of the bids. I'm making absolutely no comment about that at all. But I did express some concern that the Cabinet was being asked to make a decision of this significance on the basis of very, very little information, which is why I requested if further information could be disclosed, purely from the point of view of ensuring the Cabinet had a sufficient factual basis to make what seems to be a significant decision. And I think that, to be honest, still would be my view, that a significant decision like this, I would normally expect more information for the Cabinet. That was I think, and remains my view, given that, as I say, these officer summaries are very, very brief. Councillor Hobro, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I had a broader question about the bidding process for all of these parcels of land, and let me know if this is outside the scope of this item. But it seems to me that the bidding process for each of these parcels is likely to be completely independent. So I wondered if there is any mechanism there to help optimise the overall outcome. So each bidding process will be designed to optimise the outcome in terms of fairness within the scope of the one piece of land. But if that's operated entirely independently for 4 pieces of land, it may not be the same as optimising for the overall outcome. And I wonder if there's a mechanism built into the system that helps to make sure that once all of these pieces of land have gone through the process, then we have optimised the overall outcome. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I've turned my microphone off. Councillor Redrup, are you happy to take that?
Can I pass that over, please, to
Yes, sure.
Gareth Hill?
Thank you, Chair. So I think we've already talked about the lead member being very content with looking to kind of review. The current policy doesn't include that because the current policy is written in a much broader sense. So, but I do think it's a really valid point and something that I'm sure with the lead member's support we can look at following the outcome of this first piece of allocation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from members of the committee? I think I have Councillor Heather Williams.
Maybe more clarification, Chair. So my questions were around the matrix for each bid and that being accessible information. Didn't mention that anything had been done wrong or incorrect. Now, that seems to be the conclusion that some people have gone to about bias and things like that. Not the case, not querying anything on officers, but I do think, and as the Chair has said, there is an issue here with this report as is of Cabinet making responsible decision making from a report with such little information in it. And that is the job of scrutiny, isn't it? To ensure that scrutiny contributes to good decision making and good process. If a decision is made only on this information that's in this report, the Cabinet cannot make a good decision, in my view, based on all the information that they need. Don't need the granular, we don't need who said what or anything like that, but in order to come to the top figures, which I think off the top of my head was 78 and 62, those figures were calculated somehow following that matrix. And I think it's important that that scoring is before Cabinet, before they make a decision. As is, this report, in my view, is not fit for its purpose.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redrup?
Well, it seems that we have had a suggestion of an option that we could put forward, that the monitoring officer previously said that pink papers could have been put together for this. So perhaps Scrutiny might like to recommend that is done for the Cabinet meetings, potentially.
Thank you. It's a very helpful suggestion. Councillor Hansrosh.
So forgive me if this is what Councillor Ubro has already said, but there's 4 pieces of land. We've put one out for bids. One bid has been successful. Now, we've used the system to arrive at that conclusion. So are we going to have the same process for the whole 4 bids, or is there anything that we can change? Or is anybody looking at the actual process to make it perhaps more user-friendly? I don't know, I'm just speculating. My question then is it going to be the same process that's being followed for all 4 parcels of land?
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Redrup, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So I think the original plan is that the same process would be followed for all parcels of land. But as I said before, we are happy to review the process after this round is finished, just to reflect on how it's gone, what's happened, and if we do think there might be any improvements. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there any, you said there will be reflection. Is there any way this will be communicated to the applicants, in the sense that would they know where they could have improved for because there's another 3 parcels of land available?
Thank you, Councillor Redrup.
Yeah, sorry if I misunderstood your question before. So, of course, there will be support provided to all potential bidders, again, including anyone who didn't succeed this time. And officers will be very happy to help provide advice and guidance on how to follow the procedures to the best they possibly can to get the best result that they can in the next rounds.
Thank you very much. I think we've got Councillor Booth, and then if there's nobody else in the room, I'll come to Councillor Milne, so I think he's online, wants to ask a question.
It was just to build on some of the other comments that we've just had. So I think as part of that review, it would just be a question to ask whether we can consider how the weightings that are applied align to the business plan of the council, and is there a regular cadence at which those would need to be reviewed? Because obviously as the business planning process evolves, one would expect any procurement or selective bidding processes to also evolve to make sure that it aligns with the business plan as it changes. So it'd just be, could that form part of that review if possible? And I think that's everything I've got for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Redrup, did you want to come back on that, or you don't have to if you don't want to?
Sure. We will, of course, think about how all of this fits, and of course it's always important to make sure that we're following our business plan. I'd just like to direct you to page 118 of the papers, which does explain how this report aligns with the council priority areas, including the healthy and supported communities priority, sustainable homes and vibrant places, and being green to our core. But of course, it is always important that we do keep an eye on those sorts of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I can't see anybody else in the room, so it's Councillor Mills online, please.
Thank you, Chair. I defer to, because Councillor Redrup has really covered the points that I wanted to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So do we have any other comments in the room? Okay, so we've had a suggestion that Scrutiny would add a recommendation that Cabinet receives pink papers on this item, which discloses further details of the assessment and the bids. I think, is that a fair summary of what's been suggested? Okay, so are we happy as members of the committee to add that to the recommendation? Agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Do I need to propose and second? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we will do that. Okay, so if there are no further questions then, with that addition, the recommendation is that Scrutiny and Overview consider the report, provide feedback on the content, and confirm the recommendation of the Cabinet. The Cabinet accepts the outcome of the Faith and Community Land Allocation process and directs officers to progress leasehold agreement with the highest scoring bidder, with that addition that pink papers would be added. So are members content with that recommendation? Agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much, members. Thank you very much, Councillor Redrup as well, and other officers for your contributions to that item. Okay, so we'll go back to the normal agenda now, and we will take the Q4 performance report as item 7. So members of the committee will have seen, obviously, the report, which is in the papers. It's a fairly lengthy report. Do we have any Cabinet members or officers who would like to make any comments on this item before we open to questions? Yes, Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. I do find myself in a slightly unusual position in being fairly new to the council and also new to this portfolio, and nonetheless bringing 3 papers to scrutiny this week. So forgive me if, I'm hopefully gaining a grip on the brief, but forgive me if I do rely on officers for some of the detail. In terms of the Q4 report, so in previous existences, I've seen a lot of these things and seen a lot of red and amber flashing lights all over these things when service delivery is very difficult and when there's difficult responses to overspends in budget and legacy issues and all the rest of it. When I read the Q4 report here, that was not the experience, and that gave me some comfort. And I think sitting underneath that report suggests that we have an organisation that, as a foundation, as we move into the next 2 years and beyond, is a strong foundation. So that was my overall. I don't want to dwell on any of the specific indicators in this introduction, but there are a couple of observations from me. One was the use of purple. So for new members of the scrutiny panel, where we have our red, amber, green, and also we find purple on there, and then we look across at the narrative and see that there are ongoing pieces of work, so that the work is not necessarily complete. The advice that I have had is that because of this is a Q4 report and an end-of-year report in that sense, that the work up to that date is complete, but nonetheless there is work ongoing. So the purple does seem odd in places, and that might be something that's interesting to scrutinise. A second observation was just how much of a beast Appendix C is for us all to get our heads around, and obviously we've all been through it with a fine-tooth comb. There's a broader point I want to make, which is about how we can engage with performance as an organisation and engaging with scrutiny, and hopefully how I engage with you within the portfolio. Very, very early discussions, and I would absolutely welcome feedback as to how within this reporting we can make it more navigable in a way that scrutiny can scrutinise performance, frankly. Yeah, that's a piece I wanted to bring forward today. But otherwise, in terms of the detail and the specifics of each KPI, I'm afraid I'm largely going to be reliant on officers and other cabinet members to help me out there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Sanders, and welcome to your new position in the Cabinet.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Councillor Michael Booth.
So I'm just wondering, I've got a few questions about a few KPIs. Is the best way to do this to run through the KPIs by number so other people have an opportunity, because there may be KPIs in between the ones that I have comments about?
What I was proposing to do was that maybe if we focus perhaps on Appendix A first to deal with the KPIs, we'll do questions on Appendix A and then we'll do separate questions on Appendix B or C or potentially D, if that's okay. But within KPIs, feel free to range around.
Okay. So, I mean, the first is just a general point that within the reporting itself, there's specific graphs that I think would just need tweaking. So the axes of KPI 4, KPI 8 and KPI 19, the y-axis is not decimalised. I don't know if that's the right term, but just to allow us to infer the range that we're talking about, those would need to be tweaked. 4, 8 and 19, in all cases it should be, I think, the axes that are the issue. On KPI 01, one observation would be that whilst we're below the intervention level, the creep towards the intervention level does appear to be happening. So would we consider bringing intervention forward well in advance to ensure that we don't continue with that trajectory? Do you want me to go on or do you want me to pause? That's KPI 1, yeah. Okay, I'll share it out for everybody else. On KPI 21, my inference from the graphs is that actually performance seems to be volatile, which might be a kind of an overly emotive word, but you get what I mean from the graph. I think what that suggests to me is that we may not properly understand the drivers of performance, because we are doing things to try and improve it. I guess it's, would we consider a strategic review of the drivers of performance associated with that KPI?
Okay, thank you. Should we pause there and get some responses to those? I don't know, Councillor Sanders, if you wish to address any of those or refer them to officers.
There's a little detail there. So KPI 1, should we start there? You might have to list the numbers for me as we go through KPI 1.
I think Councillor Booth's point about the axis, the y-axis, I think it was, maybe we could probably, officers could probably note that one and perhaps come back to us on that one. And if we focus on the substantive questions about the trends on, I think it was KPI 1 and okay. KPI 21, was that right?
Yeah, KPI 21.
Okay. So I think with KPI 1, if I could refer you to our lead officer for finance, that's probably the best option, if I may, Chair.
Oh, online? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. KPI 01, the target is aligned with top quartile. We are within the top quartile.
I guess what I was getting at was, if I was to draw a trend line from 2024, late 2024 to now, it is gradually creeping ever so slightly towards the target line. So we're still below the target, we're still below the intervention point, but obviously if it carried on with that trajectory, then at some point we would breach the target line. So that was all that the point was around, was do we need to maybe have a consideration of what's driving that in addition to what we're already doing, kind of preemptively?
Yeah, and I think your point, Councillor Booth, is there's a deterioration. It might not be a deterioration that's yet hit the target line, but it will if it carries on. Yeah.
Yeah. Noted. I'll take that away and I'll have a look at what we could do about that intervention.
Thank you very much. And then there was KPI 21. Is that right? Yeah, I think Mr. Membry's in the room, so we can maybe take this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, we do review performance on complaints regularly. We've got complaints champions in every service, and they meet. They discuss the reason for performance on a particular month. We do suffer a little bit from the law of low numbers. We don't have a lot of complaints compared to many authorities. So often one or two complaints just falling outside of the time limits will have quite a significant impact. Most recently, we've been impacted by a change in the housing ombudsman arrangements, and I think that's explained a little bit more in the contextual wording there. But that we have responded to that. The housing service has dedicated more resources to complaints and do keep a very close eye on them. All of the other services have been reasonably consistent in delivering against targets. But as I say, sometimes just the odd one creeping one day over will actually make a 10% difference in the performance, but we do keep a close eye on them.
Okay, thank you very much. Have you got more questions, Councillor Booth? Or do you want to pause? I have Councillor Lunn on the list as well, and Councillor Heather Williams, but...
Thank you, Chair. I'll defer my question to Appendix B.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Booth, did you want to ask a few more? And then I'll go to Councillor Williams.
Yeah. It was essentially around KPI 15, so the average days to relet all housing stock. I guess it was just for clarification of, do we need to do extra work upstream, as it were, to ensure that properties are left in a fit state to actually help us as a council to reduce the average days? So I guess it's what work is being done in that area to help us, because it feels like it's downstream, upstream issues, and we may well have a handle of the downstream side.
Yeah, thank you. I actually had a question on that as well, because obviously, as members can see, in 2025, the target and intervention levels were changed, but we've exceeded the new one and significantly exceeded the old one. So yes, I wanted to ask a question about whether there is a systemic issue here that we need to address.
Yeah, I'm happy to deal with that. So I'll answer the first question first. So yes, of course, it's the better quality properties that we get back, the easier it is to turn properties around. But the way that we approach empty properties with the agreement of members is that we choose to do the work on properties to bring them up to lettable standard whilst the properties are empty. So typically, you'll get property that's been occupied for a long time and left by perhaps an elderly person who's previously refused work because of the impact that would have on their life. Whereas some councils would let that property and do the work around the incoming tenants. The position of this council has always been, since I've been here, is that we do the work beforehand and give the person a property which they're pleased to move in and a sense of pride. And coming on to the second question, about the systemic problem, is that we have recognised there are a backlog of properties, a rump of properties that we need to clear. And what we've done is that we've engaged a secondary repairs contractor to take those, and once that backlog's cleared, we're confident that we'll have enough resources to improve our overall speed in the coming months.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Booth? Oh.
No, absolutely fine, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I think next I've got Councillor Holbrook. Well, I'm doing committee members. I'm being, following the rules.
That's great, thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to make a couple of positive comments on some of the trends that are going really well. KPI 4, the arrears in, sorry, I'm going back to KPI 4. Tenant rent arrears, this is going well beyond the target level. And I also wanted to comment that KPI 22 is in a similar situation where we're clearly doing much better than we would have to in order to remain within the satisfaction level. So congratulations on that. I had a couple of small points just about presentation. So page 21, KPIs 5 and 6. I think the way it's presented graphically is makes it quite difficult to see the size of the discrepancy between, or the size of the differences between target intervention and the actual numbers. And I'd really rather we zoomed in on the interesting part of that graph rather than having so much of it taken up, plotting the things that we don't need to see. So if it's possible to change that for next time, that would be great. So I also had a question about KPI 20, page 31. Just going to move on to that. So this is about the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting. And I know I've asked questions about this in the past, but I haven't asked this question in the past. So the dip that we've seen recently is quite dramatic, and I understand that this is explained in the text in terms of involving national shifts. So my question really is whether or not we've looked at comparisons with other councils' figures for this measure and their evolution over the same time period to make sure that this really is an effect that is acting in the same way on multiple councils, rather than something that we just haven't seen that is affecting South Cambs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got someone online. I can't see who. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, Kevin Ledger online. I think he's going to address some of those questions. Is that right?
Hi there. Yeah, if possible, can I just address the point about the presentation of the business rates collection and council tax rates collection KPIs, which were KPI 5 and 6. I actually took away an action from a previous scrutiny committee, which was to have a conversation around the presentation of that for future reports. And that is a conversation that I've now had with Councillor Stobart, who was the person who raised that at that previous meeting. And there are plans to introduce a new presentation for those two KPIs as a trial for Q1. And obviously we'll be more than happy to take some feedback about whether that is an improvement or not. So just wanted to come in on that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very helpful. Oh, and I think, yes, we've got somebody else online as well. Ms. Baudet, yeah.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'll address the second question. The commentary in the report also refers to the national trends. Data reflects that, so very much national trend is downwards, and we've also done some comparison with civil authorities. So apart from the national figures, yes, our figures reflect other councils as well. And I think the point I'll make is that we've also benchmarked against very, very high performing councils. The big difference is that most of them, virtually all of them, already have weekly food waste collections. That's how they can maintain their high performance. So what we expect is that by the time we roll out this service to the whole service area by the end of the year, we will see a marked difference in performance as well. But yes, our figures reflect not just national figures, but also councils of similar demographics.
Did you want to come back on any of that?
Thank you. That's a really clear answer. Thanks very much.
I mean, I just on that point, just on KPI 20. I mean, I appreciate this is a difficult question to answer, but I think in the report it mentions the fact that the waste packaging, rules have changed, and that might partly explain why our numbers have dropped off. And I accept what was just said about weekly food waste collections will obviously change the picture. But I mean, is there sort of any work being done to sort of quantify what the impact of those changes in national packing rules would be? In the sense of, is it possible to sort of disaggregate, underlying trends within the district from those sorts of, national changes that would impact the figures? Or would your view be that actually it's impossible to separate those two things out? We can't really tell if there is an underlying trend specific to South Cambridgeshire, or if it is entirely, accounted for in in these packaging changes, because I would assume that those packaging changes would have affected all councils equally and not just us. So that's where maybe a comparative, analysis would come in handy.
There is some analysis done in terms of the global picture nationally. So we know that the trends towards the quantity, the weight of materials collected, plastic, paper, cardboard cans, that's been very, very well quantified. What's difficult to do is quantify that at a local level. But we do have figures that very clearly show that the amount of materials we collect at the curbside nationally for the key materials has definitely gone down significantly. But it's very, very difficult to now pinpoint that to the very local level like Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So just to come back on that one. So, I mean, would it be possible to sort of compare, South Cambridgeshire to East Cambridgeshire to Huntingdonshire to other places so that we could, see if actually we're all going down at the same level or whether actually we're going down, at a different level if we're an outlier in any way?
Yes, we can, and we have that. We can share that. We can share that comparison in the next few weeks. Yes, we can.
That will be very helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to actually bring in Councillor Heather Williams, if that's all right. Oh no, sorry, Councillor Canterbury. Sorry, I missed you there.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if it's the right place to do it, but in the report under KPI 20, could we possibly include the information about the national shift? Because I think just saying there has been a national shift with no evidence or quantifying of that sounds a bit wishy-washy. It'd be better to be able to actually see that national shift, and we can then see the effect it's had on South Cambs.
I think what we'll do is, because we don't want to take up so much space in this part of the report, we've done a much more detailed analysis of the national picture, which we can share that separately, rather than try and summarize that into the space we have here. So we can share that information as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to come back, Councillor Canterbury, or are you happy? Okay. I'm going to take Councillor Heather Williams now, if that's okay, and then I'll come back to Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. So just picking up on the answers. So starting with the complaints, it was in the response from Mr. Membry, it was said, about other authorities, and we're doing quite well. Just wondering how we compare to the national average. If you could give us those figures, because obviously to make that statement, we must have comparisons and check with other authorities. Secondly, on days to relet, as you can see, it has been changed, but it's not resolving the issue. It's just becoming more and more. And I think, while I appreciate the answer which we are normally given, which Mr. Campbell, is going to give, and is probably accurate in many cases, that it's because sort of people that have refused work or those sorts of things. But it would be, I think now is the time where we need some more detail on that, because it has been going on for a very long time. So just how much, what's the percentage of, shall we say, houses where work has been refused? Because I know from my tenants, very few people actually, they're normally contacting me because they want work done and not the latter. So I think it's time for a breakdown on that, Chair, if I'm honest. And also on bins, can I say perhaps the recycling is going to change, packaging is going to change, home composting, everything it is variable. What perhaps would be a good focus is to see, are people using the black bin more? Have we got a situation in South Cambs where people are not recycling in a way they used to? And just would that be an easier thing to look at it from the other side, as it were? Just a thought, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. That's a good point, actually, because I mean, if the weight of the black bins has not gone down or gone up, that might be useful information. So, Councillor Sanders, did you want to come in on any of that or not?
Happy to go to officers. Happy to go to experts in the room.
Okay, yes. Okay, so Councillor John Batchelor has raised his hand. Did you want to come in on any of that, Councillor Batchelor?
Yeah. Yes, please, if I might.
Okay, so I'll take Councillor Batchelor, then I'll go back to Boudet, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks. Just to comment on the voids issue. As you know, we've been through this many times over the years. And I'd like to make the point that the red elements in the couple of months, the last 2 months of the three, were a policy decision to actually use our resources to deal with long-term empty properties and bring them back in, because this clearly has an adverse effect on the overall averages. I'd also like to make the point that nationally speaking, we have consistently been in the top quartile, except for those 2 months. And even with those 2 months, we're in quartile 2 and performing above the average nationally. So I just think we ought to keep that in mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Batchelor. Can we go back to Mr. Hassan about the questions relating to bins?
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, we've got Mr. Membry as well. So we'll take Mr. Hassan first, then Mr. Membry.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just draw attention to page 48, it actually shows that the trend in terms of the black bin is very much downwards. So the weight of the residual waste in the bins has gone up about 5% in the last 12 months. So this again reflects what we've been saying about the recycling figures as well. So the graph on page 48 shows that downward trend.
Oh, sorry, I turned my microphone off. Thank you. Mr. Membry?
Yes, we do have information about complaints. We receive a letter from the local government ombudsman, for example, once a year. And a report then goes to Audit and Corporate Governance Committee. That's due relatively soon. My recollection is last year we had one complaint found against us, which is a lot lower than, I don't remember off the top of my head what the national average is, but it's a lot larger than one. But when the report goes to Audit and Corporate Governance, then a briefing note containing the same information is circulated to members of this committee. So you will get that briefing note in the next few months.
Thank you very much. I'm just conscious that that was all in response to Councillor Williams' question. So I was going to ask Councillor Williams if she wants to come back, and then I'll go to Councillor Booth. And Mr. Campbell actually wants to come in. Is that on Councillor Williams' questions?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So Councillor Williams asked for some additional information on void properties. You should be pleased to know that we've reviewed the information that will be coming to in the future reports. We're going to expand the TSMs, the quality, the housing measures, and more information on voids is included within that. So that will happen.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Did you want to come back for a supplementary, Councillor Williams?
No, I'll thank officers for, and I look forward to seeing the further information. I would just like to remind for those that are on the Housing Engagement Board, the term void is not very popular, and Margaret won't be happy. So if we could perhaps try and change the language here as much as we do at the Housing Engagement Board, because our tenants don't like it. So let's see if we can move with the times.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll come back to Councillor Booth, and I don't have anybody else on KPIs, and maybe then we can move on to Councillor Lunn, who's got, I know, some questions about the strategic indicators, but Councillor Booth.
I mean, it was just a very minor point, actually, off what you said, Councillor Williams, on on figure 20. So it's more around I think even though it might be difficult to have that level of specificity around the impacts locally, I think if we can just make some broad assumptions and have a sort of the raw graph as it is on figure 20 and then an adjusted graph, that would allow us to at least interrogate the assumption that's been made. I would like to think it's within the realms of possibility that we could create a broad set of assumptions that allow us to determine the impact of the kind of national picture. So it was more around that. It wasn't really it was more of a comment than.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, and I think it would be useful to get the extra information that it was suggested we could get. But I think in the next KPI report, it would be useful if officers could give thought to trying to do something along those lines. So presenting the data in a way that we can then sort of compare it quarter to quarter, that takes into account those factors. Councillor Scantlebury?
I was agreeing with you, but I just wanted to add as well that I wonder if, as the food waste collections start to be included in these graphs, that line will start to go up and sort of hide this general trend, And it might, you know, be good to have that context so that that can sort of be taken out of the assumptions, essentially.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there are quite a few moving parts, but I think officers have probably heard the comments from members. And I think if officers could take that away and have a think about what might be possible for the next report, that would be really useful. Because I can see nods. I think that's great. Councillor Sanders?
Chair, ahead of Q1, I wonder whether we could engage with each other in terms of how we do provide context. I think if we provide context around every KPI, we risk having an absolutely enormous report. But perhaps there's a way in which we can preempt some of that, where we can understand what members of the scrutiny panel would like more information on and provide context on that specifically, and do that well ahead of schedule to allow that level of scrutiny on those specifics. Would that be useful?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the thing, having been sort of on and off scrutiny for 6 years, is it's a bit reactive. So, you know, members discuss things in committee and that particular section of the report gets longer. And then members of the, you know, they move on to something else and that section gets longer. I mean, I'm not sure quite how we do it too far in advance of time, because we don't get the figures until, you know, sort of week before the meeting. But I take your point that we probably don't want the report to get longer and longer and longer by adding in more and more detail. So maybe as a committee we can, not now, but at some other point, maybe think about where we want slightly less, where we want slightly more. I think that's probably quite a useful suggestion.
Very happy to engage with the committee outside of the meeting on that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so do we have any more questions specifically on KPIs on Appendix A, or are we happy to move on to strategic indicators on Appendix B? Okay, so Councillor Lunn.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by complimenting everybody who has made input to these KPIs and strategic indicators. In a previous life and various roles, I've been both involved in putting together KPI reports and reviewing them, and I do appreciate the amount of effort and time that goes into preparing them. And I was delighted to see that they existed here and they were taken seriously. I've got two questions on the strategic indicators. One is general and one is specific. If I could take the general one first. I did feel when I was looking at these indicators, I couldn't tell whether we were doing very well or whether there was room for improvement. Many of the indicators don't have a target or a benchmark to compare against. And if I can, I don't want to have discussion about the specific, but it's literally the first one that I came on the sustainable homes and vibrant places, number of new council houses delivered. Excellent news that it's the best year for delivery of council homes. How do I know it's as good as it could be and that we shouldn't be doing better? I haven't got a frame of reference, so perhaps some consideration could be given on these strategic indicators to providing a frame of reference, be it versus a target or a benchmark, so we can actually make informed observations.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sanders, do you want to respond to that, or are there officers in the room?
Yeah, on that general point, Councillor, I have to say, contrary to other things I've heard, I tend to agree. I do think that there needs to be more context around some of these to help us understand. I do have a piece of work going forward with colleagues to look into this sort of it's a sort of storytelling, isn't it? The so what of these figures and the context around them. So yeah, that is something I will be picking up in the coming weeks. Thank you. Kevin, yes, sorry, our lead officer for performance is online if we want to.
Yes, I can't see who wants to come in online, but if there's anyone who does want to come in, then that would be great.
Yeah, sorry, my hand wasn't up properly. Yeah, I think you've covered it there, Councillor Sanders, but just to kind of give a little bit of context that this financial year was the first year that we introduced the idea of the strategic indicators. I think initially there was some thoughts that it would be kind of just useful just to kind of be able to monitor the trends and whether that was kind of better or worse than last year. But that was just as an initial attempt for this first year to kind of introduce that as an additional way of showing progress and these measures that are key to the delivery of our corporate plan, and absolutely more than happy to engage and take on board any thoughts around how that can continue to evolve to make sure that it provides maximum usefulness, I suppose, as part of these reviews at committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor London, do you have any other questions?
I have a second very specific question.
I thought you did, yes.
If I may. I need to just quickly find it in the note. It's is it that one? Yes. So strategic indicator 10A1 on the reductions of operating emissions. We now look to have 6 years of data in the graph from 2019-20 to 2024-25. Being a scientist, well, certainly by degree, if not profession, I then just extrapolated forward 6 years on current trend, which appeared roughly linear. So doubling 27, I get to 54, which 54% reduction. And that 6-year extrapolation takes us to 2030, 2031, where our target is 75% reduction. And two things. One, I would like to draw Cabinet's attention to that. But my question is, what can we collectively, either Scrutiny and Overview Committee or the Council or anybody else, do to make sure we hit that 75%? Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just come in there, I think that's a really good question. And I mean, if we look on page 46, so I think that the graph Councillor Lund referred to is on page 45. On page 46, it talks about further reductions in carbon emissions over the coming years will include it. I mean, I appreciate it may not be possible to exactly quantify the contribution that each one of those things will make to the target, but I think if there could be some idea of what sort of contribution those measures are expected to make, that will be helpful. And actually, similarly with the backward-looking part, where it talks about emissions reductions to date have been achieved through a range of actions, including, it would be useful, if possible, to get some data on the contribution that the already achieved measures have made to where we are. So I think, was there somebody online who wanted to come in
Yes.
on that one? Oh, yes, Mr. Hassan, yep.
Yeah. Thank you, and through you, Chair. So we have an annual carbon emissions report that's it's been prepared now. So that should be ready in the next few months for the period up to the end of 2025. That will give us a full picture of where we are at in terms of the reduction to less than 5%. And that's broken down into these various components as well. So once that's done, we'll see where we are on that trajectory. We'll document what the contributory factors are. And then if we need to have any much more accelerated interventions, we'll be drawing attention to that.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Lund?
Thank you very much, Joe.
Okay, I'll take committee members first then. So Councillor Booth.
So yeah, it was just to build upon that, and I would hope within that report, to build on the figure on page 45, I think, as we've said, we need to be able to articulate what scheme will deliver what benefit and by when. So whether that be as we've got it now, but as kind of a stacked bar chart where we can see the relative contribution of each of these initiatives. Because for me, to ensure that we're offering best value for taxpayers, we almost need to be able to quantify the pounds per CO2 reduction or pounds per percentage change as part of any kind of benefits framework to decide if we spend money on X, Y, Z. And I'm sure those things do take place. It's just drawing it out more in the reporting, which may already be what was going to go into the report. But I'd just like to clarify that if not, but I think you're going to tell me that it already was.
Exactly, yes. So it's a different report. The annual carbon emissions report does go into that level of detail. So it's not the same graphs, it's a different set of graphs that goes into details of each contributory factor.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really helpful. Okay, I've got Councillor Heather Williams on my list next.
Thank you. Two things. Just wanted to echo what Councillor Lunn said in relation to, actually, for example, what he gave for that KPI. Obviously, there was legislation change, which meant we could use our right to buy receipts differently, and the government changed rules around actually supporting councils, I think, positively, to build more council housing. So when we're looking at those comparisons, we need to make sure that we're, apples and apples, not oranges and pears. So I think that's a really important point, Chair. The other thing was if officers could give us a bit more context around page 55 on the year-to-date income achieved through the transformation programme. Because as you can see, the actual additional income generated year-to-date is lower than the estimated. But the context says that the target was achieved, but with a proportion due to be realised in 26-27. Normally with these things, it would be what's achieved, and anything that's saved in that year would roll forward and be saved in that year. So is it that some things are being backdated, or just a bit more explanation, and actually what the value is of what is being realised in 26-27 as opposed to the year that it was estimated to be in? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is it Mr. Membry? Yes, sorry.
Yes, it's unfortunately a case of one day makes all of the difference. What happened with the work that the transformation team did with colleagues in waste was identified and delivered considerable increases in income and savings. But as you move through the year, some of those savings and some of those increases in income can't be delivered within that financial year. The way this indicator works, it's only reported as a saving if that saving is delivered within that financial year. So if it had been delivered on the 31st of March, it would have been delivered in this report, but it was delivered in the next financial year, so the 1st of April, so one day made the difference. I think the difference is about £600,000. I think it's identified in the context that being an additional £400,000 in income for waste and a saving of £200,000 primarily from transformation. So that saving wasn't technically delivered in the year, it was delivered the next day.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you want to come back?
Yes, what safeguards have been put in to assure that this isn't double accounted for, so your targets for next year, that this 600,000 will not be put towards next year's savings?
This element of the transformation programme came to an end on the 31st of March. So although we're going to continue to report on the savings that were identified but not delivered in the year until they are delivered, so the first quarter of this year, for example, Scrutiny will get another report. But then a full report on the transformation programme, what's been delivered, is going to Cabinet in September, and it might be that this committee chooses to have a review of that report, and that will identify all of the savings delivered, along with a lot of the other things that have been delivered by the programme.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to come up once more?
Very quickly, thank you, Chair. I would very much agree that this committee should see that report, but also there are considerable savings that are required. We've got a budget gap of 8.5 million, I think it is, over the MTFS. So I would strongly advise that you look at every piece of detail you can, and that something, even though this project may come to an end, the equivalent is brought in, because that is a rather large budget gap.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I think it would be very useful to get that detail. Thank you very much. Okay, so are there any other members of the committee who wish to ask any questions? If not, we can move off this item. Okay, so the recommendation is that Scrutiny and Overview has reviewed the operational KPIs, comments on the figures in Appendix A, reviews the housing tenant satisfaction measures in Appendix D, and recommend where appropriate actions required to address issues identified. So I think we have reviewed certainly Appendix A and Appendix B, and I think members have also reviewed Appendix C and D. We will actually come back to the matters in Appendix D anyway in a separate item. So are we all happy to agree by affirmation that we've done all of those things? Agreed? Agreed. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Right, I'm slightly conscious of time. So we've been going for an hour and a quarter. I think we'll probably need a break at some point. But do you want to have a 5-minute comfort break now, or do one more item and then have the break? Any strong views? Right, okay. Should we have a 5-minute break? Come back at 10 to? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, welcome back to this scrutiny and overview meeting of South Cambridge District Council. So we will resume going through the agenda. So we are on to item 8 now, which is the 3C ICT 1-year audit update. So I believe we have officers in the room who may want to make some comments on this item before we have questions. So is it actually Councillor Sanders? Do you want to make comments as well?
I should probably introduce maybe today. So I had an excellent history lesson this week on this particular item. So obviously, again, I'm new to this in terms of the portfolio. But for members in the committee who are also new, obviously 3C ICT is a shared service of our IT services across 3 councils. There's a huge amount to be gained from having shared services, but also they're obviously very difficult and complex, particularly in something like ICT, where it is a grand old haystack of applications and front ends and workflows and hardware and all the rest of it. So it's a tricky old job trying to bring this together and make it work. If we add into that the fact that we're now facing LGR, all of that work which has been done to make this work as a shared service now has to look into a crystal ball at a range of different geographies and so on. So that's sort of where we're at, and I'm sure there will be officer additions in terms of the detail. The one thing I would say is about member ICT. There's potentially a temptation to dwell on member ICT in this particular meeting. I will take that up in the next few weeks, working with our CDIO. So probably best to avoid some of the real detailed issues around that and take them up with me, if that helps, Chair, but obviously happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you very much. I suspect there may be some questions about member ICT, but I think you're absolutely right. We shouldn't just focus on member ICT. We should look more broadly. We've got Simon Oliver as well. I don't know if you wanted to make any comments or not.
Thank you, Chair. And I would also like to thank Councillor Sanders for his incredible patience as he undertook that history lesson and was introduced to the wonderful world of 3C shared services and ICT this week. For those who are new to the committee, I was asked in February to attend to give an update on the remediation year of ICT. There was considerable dissatisfaction back in 2024, and we undertook a number of actions during 2025 to bring the service back into an acceptable state. In February, all 3C partner councils for the shared service agreed to formally remove ICT from remediation, but there was acknowledgement there was still more to do. Some activities from the remediation year hadn't been completed, but also the level of IT service still needed to be lifted. So we agreed that we would cease a formal remediation approach and heavy scrutiny of the ICT service, but that the actions that were left would be taken forward in a managed way. And this report essentially confirms that we have 3 delivery vehicles for those remaining changes: a LGR readiness programme, a user experience improvement programme, and then some work into our business as usual. Just to give some confidence that things are being taken forward, since the report was written, paragraph 19 relating to the officer self-service, a refreshed self-service offer was launched this afternoon. And in regards to paragraph 20 regarding revised KPIs, they are all now in place and being reported on and go to the 3C Shared Services Board on the 17th of this month. So it's just to give confidence that all the activities that were agreed and the approach that was agreed in February have been undertaken, and that's the basis for taking things forward now.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Okay, members. So do we have any members who'd like to ask any questions of the Cabinet member or officers on this report? Councillor Lunn.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the introductory remarks. I'm not quite sure whether my question really relates to this audit, but there is mention of the LGR readiness. And while I appreciate we don't know what the final unitary authorities are going to be, my question is, at this stage, are there any items that give you cause for concern already, either due to their complexity, regardless of the boundaries, or the timeline for implementing it? The change that is, sorry, not LGR.
Thank you. So, obviously, whilst we don't know which of the options will be selected and the end geographies, what we are able to do is plan for those, because it would be sensible to do so. And also, there are a number of activities that would need to be taken regardless of which option. So all of the discovery work to ensure that we understand our estate and all of our systems and our contracts, but also understand those of the other 6 councils as well. So we have that full picture. That work is undergoing now. That has to be done anyway, so we get a really good grounding. And we are working with my peers across those councils to ensure we are working together and planning together and finding the challenges and together. So no particular concerns at this time. Obviously, it's a significant undertaking in a compressed timescale. As time passes, that time gets more compressed. I'm not going to say it's going to be a straightforward, easy and plain sailing, but I do believe that the right activities are being done by the right people to mitigate those risks as much as possible at this time. And I think as soon as the decision is made, I think that will take a huge amount of ambiguity out of this, allow us to focus on the actual activities that are needed, and also it will mean that people will be able to dedicate themselves to an outcome rather than across several. So, as best as we can do, absolutely yes.
Thank you. Would you like to come back on that, Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so who've got, yes, Councillor Sanders.
Sorry, if I may, Chair. So there is a point here, I think, that in terms of IT systems and where service delivery is reliant on those IT systems, as we move to midnight at the end of this organisation existing and then into vesting day, the important thing is that the systems are up and running. Whether they are perfect is another matter, or whether we have moved everything over to a new entity, that's almost impossible. So the chances are there will be things going on where there's a replication of systems, etc., which means that as they face services, as they face residents, etc., they are working and in place. So as long as there isn't an expectation that everything will completely change over on that vesting day.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lunn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Yes, my question was, I fully appreciate mergers and divestitures are very complex, and legal, HR and IT are usually the 3 areas that are the most challenging. And I appreciate what you were just saying. My thought, though, is are there any things, particularly in terms of timelines, where legally, for instance, we need to have something working by the date that we actually transition to the new unitary from the shadow? I hear that not at this stage, no, which I'm satisfied with. I fully appreciate that, yes, not all the systems will necessarily have transitioned, but it's the showstoppers, I guess, is what I'm asking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Hobro and Councillor Heather Williams on my list. I'll go to Councillor Hobro next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm afraid this is a question about the member user experience, but I'll try to keep it brief. So first of all, I understand there's been a significant change in the way that services are delivered to members at the point where, at the point of the election, and it has, so the ability for members to connect directly to officers through the same systems is really valuable. So I just wanted to say thank you for enabling that. And I think new members won't have realised that the members and the officers were previously on different systems. And so that really is a big enabler. So I wanted to recognise that. And I know that this was quite a big change and that there were some teething problems. But my question isn't really about the teething problems. It's more about two issues, really. The first is about the issue of members' own devices. So I'm a user of a home device versus the devices issued by the council. Now, some members are members of more than one council and have a job, and so might be expected to carry 3 laptops around as a result of that, which is, of course, impractical. And so the ability to be able to participate fully from outside the council-owned devices is quite important. And I hope that going ahead, it will be recognised that this approach is given equal merit to using the council's devices just purely for practical reasons. The second question was about multi-factor authentication. And there does seem to have been an enormous increase in the amount of that is required. And I appreciate the importance of that as a security, in general, as a security measure to make sure that someone connecting is authorised to do so. But it's the frequency with which it's happening. So I think members are having to use multi-factor authentication many times per day on the same device sometimes. And I wondered if we could perhaps have a review of that or another look at how often that's required, because there's been a huge increase in the number of times that needs to be done since the system's changed at the point of the election. Thank you.
If I could just come in on that last point again, just to talk about members, but you know, just to give an example, there can be problems that arise as a result of the need to re-authenticate 2 or 3 times a day, which, you know, I use my own device as well. So I didn't miss a deadline the other day, but I typed an email and I pressed send, and I needed to get it in by 12 o'clock. And then I realised about 11 o'clock that actually my computer had logged out again. So I needed to log back in, and that was about an hour after I'd hit send, and it doesn't tell me that it hasn't sent it. I just happened to notice that little red box that appeared at the bottom of my email. So it can sometimes cause problems, the need to re-authenticate 2 or 3 times a day.
Thank you, Chair. So the security standards that we implement are the ones that are set by the National Cybersecurity Centre, and we need to maintain those standards to meet our obligations. So for some particular ways of usage, that can cause friction, and we accept that, and we are working to reduce those. So in line of the couple of points that were made, multi-hatters, as I call them, people who work for several councils, will always be a challenge because an application can only be controlled by one organisation. That is a technical constraint. So if you were a South Cambs member and then joined the county, for example, you would say, hey county, why can't I use this fantastic system that South Cambs has put into place? So we do need to work around those. We do understand the impact, and we're looking at a way that we can ensure that we meet our obligations to security controls while still giving you full access. But that is work in progress. But at this moment in time, you are able to operate as both on a personal device or a county-provided device. In terms of the authentication and the frequency, I absolutely agree. It is excessive at the moment. One of the challenges we have is because of that reduced control set, we have to increase the authentication because we need to make sure the devices are safe. Once those security controls are re-established to base levels, then we can actually take a risk-based approach to authentication, which allows you to log in for longer and it not keep asking you. So there is a process in place, there's a review in place to enable that to happen. We just need to go through the process to get ourselves to the right place and ensure that things are balanced and right. So fully accept at the moment it's not where it needs to be, but colleagues are working with the CSIROs who are responsible for our cybersecurity stance to make sure that we get that right. But absolutely, we are looking to remove those frictions from members going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hobro.
So thank you very much. It's comforting to hear that it's under review. I mean, I'd just like to make the slightly more general point that whenever increased security is traded off against increased inconvenience, there's always a danger that it doesn't increase the security. And I'm much more fond of measures that bring increased security along with increased convenience in the package, and I realise that's not always easy to achieve. But yeah, I'd hope that we can find a way to get there. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Heather Williams next.
So 2 areas, and those that know me well, I'm going to do deep breathing when I discuss LGR and try not to lose my rag with the government. However, several questions. Naturally, you're going to need to do the best you can with the money you've got in the time that you've got to do it in. And when I ask these questions, I do understand for you, Chair, that is a challenge. But I think once we've got the boundaries and you're very clear, not you, Chair, but officers are clear what the programme is, I do think we need to see particularly the risks and almost reassess that risk register in relation to LGR when it comes to IT, because the risk of cybersecurity, to be quite frank, to be throwing us all up in the air in the current global situation is absolutely ridiculous. But IT is one of the things that I'm really concerned about, and disaggregating the 3CIT. I think we should all be, in the world we're living in right now, we really need to be careful on that. So I know as a member, I would really appreciate some more reassurance about, are we resourced enough for those risks, or are we making do with the best of what we can in the time we've got, the resources we've got? Are we keeping a track of the bill? Because whether they're going to reimburse us or not, I'd quite like to serve this national government with the cost of LGR to this council, so they know exactly where their so-called, wonderful, we're all going to make everybody, richer policies that make us all poorer, goes. And I genuinely mean that. I say that quite flippantly, but LGR is a huge cost to our residents, and I think it's important for transparency purposes that we are keeping a track of this. The other thing when it comes to LGR, I think, is that while we have this report, it is quite a light report, and I appreciate when it comes to security, there are reasons why that may be, but if it needs to be pink papers, it needs to be. I'm not a fan of that, Chair, as you know, but on something like this, right now, as we sit here, we're hearing sort of processes and warm words, but actually I think we need some more flesh on the bones. But that may come after July. And just quickly on member IT, can I say, I really feel outside my office as members now is the IT service, and some of our officers have been working tirelessly since the election to try and resolve all the member queries. So I hold them in high esteem, but the reality is whoever made the decision to turn off all the emails and not have things set up properly, that needs reviewing, and that needs, because our members are actually a really important part, not only of the democratic process, but we are responsible for this council. So if we do not have functioning emails, not only can our residents not get in touch with us properly, but it is interfering with the democratic process of this council. And it was carnage, to be quite frank. And actually, when it comes to functionality, what Councillor Hobro has described is lovely. That's utopia. You said it in the past, like it's now happening. No, for lots of us, it's not. It is simply not. I have less functionality than I had before the election, and I have less abilities. For example, I can't get on Teams now, whereas I could before the election to access those officers. It is getting in the way of democratic representation. And sorry, I did say I was going to try and breathe, Chair, and I did try.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Let's bring in, Mr. Oliver.
It wouldn't be for me to comment on the finances of LGR, but in terms of the wider considerations around security, all 7 councils have agreed to meet a base security standard, and that security standard will be maintained throughout the transition process and into the new world. So we are all setting a standard and ensuring we meet those NCSE, those National Cybersecurity Centre guidelines throughout. So I want to give that absolutely, and we will hold each other to account on those. Secondly, in terms of the 3CIC shared service and cybersecurity, one of the projects that is going ahead is the move to a managed service for our cybersecurity. So we are moving to a external service which will give us a 24/7, 365 capabilities, which will continually assess our vulnerabilities on an hour-by-hour basis. As soon as anything comes out in the wild world, we'll be tested against that. Any fixes that need to be undertaken will be undertaken immediately, and any breaches or potential breaches that are happening will be dealt with at the point if it happened. It will be a significant uplift. So by moving to the new standards and having a managed service that maintains those standards gives the council's assurance that we will do that, and that will be a significant uplift from historic situations. In regards to members' IT, I do not play down the challenges and the impacts. I wrote to every member across all 3 councils personally, and I take full accountability. There is a lessons learnt that is being produced that will be shared with the portfolio holder, and that can be shared wider. We will not seek to downplay the issues, but what we will do in that report is give a full balance of the history, why things were done in a certain way, and we understand that things weren't right. Personally, the communications were not good enough. The training to provide members with understanding how those controls would impact weren't done as well as they could be. And we missed the opportunity to put the canary group in, as I call it, to go early to check. Absolutely stand by that and accept those. But we will play those back, and we will give a full account of why things were done in the way that they were. But there's no shying away from. It's been a mixed experience. Some people have had a really good positive experience, and some people have had some real challenges, and we don't downplay those.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sanders, did you want to come back on that?
I think if I may just follow up from that, I think there's an offer from me within the portfolio. There's obviously a lot of frustration, particularly from sitting councillors before the election. I'm really keen to liaise, and obviously there's a lot of detail I don't know at this point, but it goes along with a lot of frustration. So however I can be useful in that conversation, I will do my best to be so. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if I could just make just a short point on this, it's a comment. It doesn't require anybody to answer it, but I think just one other thing just worth bearing in mind, and this may not necessarily be specifically for IT, but just in terms of retiring and non-returning members. I mean, they were officially in office until the Monday, but they had their email cut off on that Friday, and I think some of the non-returning or retiring members did want to hand things over, you know, let people know from their councillor email not to use that email, but it was just cut off 3 days before they officially finished their terms. I think just in terms of, we may not have ever have elections again to this council, but if we do, I think just bearing in mind that transition could have been smoother. Okay, I think I've got Councillor Booth next.
It was just more widely about the kind of the IT and the transformation, and obviously now we technically have some sort of counterparty risk in the sense that members and the council are on the same system. Therefore, if I were to click on a phishing email or whatever, I can compromise more people by accident than I could previously, as I understand it. So I guess, you know, within my day-to-day employment, we're regularly tested with kind of fake, increasingly sophisticated fake emails that are leading me to have trust issues, to be honest. But is it something the council's already doing? And if not, would they consider doing that?
Good question.
So we have, last year, as part of that remediation programme, invested heavily in the tools to keep us secure. So you're in a much better stance than you were previously. and it is much harder now to do things which would cause damage than they would have done previously. So the chances to cause damage are lessened. We do undertake phishing exercises where we send out fake emails, fake links, see if people press them. Members will be part of that that cohort, and we do go about. We take a view that what we wish to do is educate, not punish. So what we ask people to do is, if you do click on something, take it in the spirit it's taken. You know, review, think, but also the training we give. Again, we ask members to really take that on board, sensible, no example, not just for cybersecurity, but for information management as well. Everything you do can be utilised in an FOI. You write something down on a post-it note. You know, in theory, it is. So we want to make sure that members are fully briefed on all of those as well. But we do try and put the technical controls in to safeguard you, plus those soft controls that members can take. But yes, we do test and we do challenge. And one of the kind of the conflicts at the moment is, and this is the crux of the problem, is how do we ensure we put the right controls in place to safeguard the council whilst also allowing members to work the way that they do. So one of the things that we are doing is we're bringing in somebody to support us who knows all of the tools, knows all of the controls, knows how this is done, who has worked with members previously, who will actually create a program where they will come round, talk to you, explain the tools, how they work, and show you how you can work with the controls successfully, because at the moment you're finding it battle because nobody's shown you actually if you do it like this you can get it works nice. So we're going to take that, and I apologise that's coming after the fact, but we are going to do that and take people through. So it'll be a bit around security and controls, but quite a bit around here's how to use the tools and how you can benefit from that investment in those tools that we have undertaken over the last 18 months.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, right, I can't see any other members. Did you want to come back briefly, Councillor Williams? And then I'll try and wrap this up.
Lovely, thank you. Two parts of my question that weren't answered, Chair, if I can. The risk register, will there be a report coming where we can actually assess the IT risks of LGR and a risk register for it as a standalone? And if IT aren't keeping the bill, is the Chief Executive or Senior Leadership Team keeping the bill for government?
So there is a ICT risk register that is maintained by the ICT Data and Customer Services Workstream. That is available to senior leaderships at all 7 councils, and it is regularly reviewed. Beyond that, I cannot comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think I'll take Councillor Sanders, and then I think we might wrap this one up.
Just one final comment. In terms of cybersecurity and so on, there are 3 legs, aren't there, to the tool? There's the security, there is the training and the vigilance, and then there's also business continuity planning in the event of. And that's probably not an appropriate conversation to be having, and it might be a pink papers type conversation, but obviously I think that's something that will be on my desk as part of work going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate the willingness to engage on that. Okay, members, I think we've looked at that report in some detail. So if we're all happy, our recommendation is that Scrutiny and Overview Committee acknowledge the report and its contents and the management actions committed to, and provide any feedback. And I think we have done all of those things. So can we agree by affirmation that we've done that? Agreed? Excellent. Thank you all very much. Okay, so let's move on to item 9, which is sort of sticking with matters IT related. We have got the impact of the council's AI assistant, Sam, on calls going to the call centre. So we've all seen the report that's before us. I think we have the lead officer for this, Jeff Membry. I don't know if Mr. Membry wanted to say a few words.
Yes, very briefly, Chair, just to let members know that this is actually a follow-up to a report that came to Scrutiny in February about the council's approach to use of digital, whereas members asked, or were particularly interested in the part that related to Sam, and asked for some of the details. For those, as we've got new members on the committee, to just make members aware of the fact that we deliberately take a very cautious approach to our use of AI. We make sure that actually it's low risk, that the answers it gives are secure and that it focuses on transactional inquiries. So there are some AIs out there that you can go on and use and ask lots of complex and difficult questions and gives you very whizzy answers, whereas actually what we try and make sure with ours is that we get things right, and actually getting things right and moving in a slow and controlled manner is more important than rushing to try and take advantage of the very latest cutting edge technology. But I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can kick off, I just had one question. Well, I had one question to start with. So paragraph 13, it says that a call is treated as answered if a customer does not choose to be put through to the contact centre after getting a response from SAM. And that's in relation to telephone calls fully answered in SAM during office hours. And on paragraph 17, it says that out of hours, SAM has been able to answer 56% of the calls received. How would we know? What's the metric that's used for out of hours? Because, of course, we can't use the put through to the call centre metric out of hours. So I was wondering where that 56% came from.
This is effectively what SAM is able to respond to. So if somebody telephones SAM and asks them a question, what it does is decide whether it's able to answer that question and will then answer it. If it can't answer that question, it won't attempt to answer it. We try and work very hard to make sure that it doesn't suffer from hallucinations. So what it's doing in this stage is answering. What it's telling you is that that's where SAM has said it can answer questions. It is a slightly different metric than the other one.
Okay, thank you. It's helpful. Okay, any other members who wish to? Councillor Booth, I can see.
So I think overall it's clearly providing a lot of benefits to the council, and I think it's just about drawing that out more and understanding those kind of the effectiveness metrics. So on page 108 and 9, we've got the list of the topics that it can answer. And you've mentioned it tends to focus on transactional things. I think with respect to the stacked bar, I think what I would be more interested in is what percentage of calls for each type SAM couldn't answer, and a description of why it couldn't answer it, whether it's we are not allowing it yet because it would be too sophisticated, whether it be for other reasons, just to have some clarification of that along with the quantification, and then how we intend to feed that back in going forward. I think the counts are slightly less interesting to me than the percentages, if you understand where I'm coming from. It's useful to know what it's doing. But I think for me, again, it comes back to that. This is the pounds that we've invested in it. This is the percentage improvement in either calls handled or the time that someone spends on the phone with the council. I'm sure we've got all of that information. It's really just about how we present it. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Membry.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, again, was the fact that this is effectively a split report. So some of that information was in the earlier report. But I'm very happy to circulate more detailed information around to committee members if you find that helpful. We do get quite a lot of stats. The difficulty is always working out exactly whether they're useful stats or not. But yeah, I'm very happy to circulate more statistics.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Booth?
No, I think that sounds good. And as I say, I was conscious of the fact that I haven't seen the previous report, so it may well be that a lot of that information is already in there. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Something that I'd be quite interested in is it's great to see all this data and seeing that it's been responded by SAM, but I'd be quite interested to know from the user's side of things, so what the response has been from people that are using the service, because although their questions might be answered, they could be frustrated, they might still get the answer, but that's the sort of context that I'd be quite interested in seeing as well. Thank you.
SAM does two things. It answers the phone, but also it gives web chats. The advantage of web chat is at the end of that, we ask people to effectively a smiley face, and we get something like an 87% satisfaction rate. So it's generally pretty positive. The other thing that's actually remarkable is, You probably see stories in the press about large numbers of volumes of complaints in relation to chatbots. We've had very few. I think over the course of a year we've had less than 10 complaints about Sam. Now again, one complaint is a complaint too many, but given the volume of calls that it's answering, you know, it's not a bad response rate. And indeed, we are continuing to train Sam. So initially we started in the top 10 inquiries that we got across the council. Then we moved to the top 10 inquiries for each service across the council. And we're training it now on the next sort of set of queries. So we listen to a percentage, we record all of our calls. We listen to a percentage of the calls that Sam's answered to find out what people are asking about and to ensure that we're giving the correct answer. We get that as part of a service, you know, that we get that as part of the service we get from the supplier of Sam and at no additional cost.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. Just at the end there, you mentioned that you listen to a percentage of the calls. Do we have any data on what percentage of those calls that you listen to? Do you want to answer it one and then I'll come back? Or
Yeah, I don't have that to hand. I can get that information and send it on to you.
The 87% satisfaction rate is great, you know, hats off. But do we have any meaningful data on that 13%? The sort of smiley face up and down doesn't actually really provide us with any like meaningful learnings that we can improve the service with.
For all those that we don't get a smiley face for, the company gets the text of the contact to review that. Now, sometimes it might be that Sam said, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. And sometimes it can be that it doesn't quite point you to the right page. I think a really early example when we were first testing Sam was somebody asked who the leader of the council was and it pointed to Liz rather than Bridget. So things like that can be a mistake that Sam was making early on. So, you know, if you got that answer, you wouldn't be particularly happy. But yes, we do look at the text.
Okay, that's good to know. And my last question, is there any information or data we have on the carbon impacts of using SAM?
Yes, we have got that. Again, it's been provided, I think, previously to members, but I think it would be appropriate to send that round to members again, given we've got a fresh group of members on the committee.
I very appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you very much. So now I've got Councillor Hansraj.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, you said something about 10% complaints. How many of, or did you, I may have misheard, but my question is, what percentage of disabled and elderly do not like SAM, do not know how to use a computer or such like? Is there any kind of indication you have for where this information would be?
It was actually less than 10 complaints overall. We've had SAM running for over a year, not 10%. Yet, obviously, not everybody wants to use SAM, and they don't have to. We don't make people use SAM. People can choose to go straight through to the contact centre. What this does is for those people that are happy to use SAM, it means that they don't have to queue. They can have their inquiry dealt with, but also they're not in the queue. So those people that don't want to talk to Sam, and not everybody does, has a shorter queue time themselves because there are less people in the queue, so they get through to the contact centre. Again, I covered this a little bit in the previous point, but we have absolutely no plans to get rid of our contact centre, to stop people phoning up. So, you know, this is a supplement to people making calls through to us. Now, there was an equalities impact assessment done when we introduced SAM. Again, I don't have that to hand, but if you're particularly interested, I could have the equalities impact assessment sent to you.
Yes, please, thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Hansraj, or are you okay?
I'm being sent in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's Councillor Biggs.
Thank you. I was just going to give a little my experience of Sam. So it was a few days after the election. I'm newly elected, very exciting. And in my village, we had a WhatsApp group. And I saw something on the WhatsApp group about a dead deer. And somebody was very frustrated because they tried to phone the council and they just got this bot and they couldn't get through and it was really, really frustrating. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll do what I should do. And I did it. And the bot, well, it was a bit irritating. And I wish I'd kind of paid more attention. Obviously, I didn't realise exactly what Sam was or anything. And anyway, I think I sort of put the phone down and because it wanted to talk about fly tipping. That's the thing.
Sorry to jump in, Councillor Biggs,
Yeah.
but can you speak to the microphone?
Sorry,
Because otherwise
nobody
they can't hear
me.
you
Sorry,
online.
I'm just wanting. Yeah, so sorry, like people, not machines. So yes, so it wanted to talk to me about fly tipping, and obviously a dead deer isn't really fly tipping. So anyway, I think I put the phone down and then basically said things along the lines of, I want a person, I want a person, I want a person, and I got a person, a very nice lady actually. And the deer I was promised the deer would be removed, and I put a thing back on the WhatsApp group. Somebody said, congratulations on being elected. It was all marvellous. But yeah, so it was an interesting experience. I do wonder if you do ever have sort of a focus group using it in different ways or something like that, because the experience of the user is so important.
No, absolutely. And we do. I don't think we've had a focus group on Sam, but that sounds like it might well be a good idea. I rather suspect that I'm afraid dead deers are probably not one of the things that we've yet trained Sam on, but I'm slightly disappointing that it didn't identify that earlier on and pass you straight through to the contact. I would say to any member, if you have an experience like that, let me know, because we can then go in and train Sam specifically on that area, and we do try and be responsive to any areas like that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I've got Councillor Scantlebury who wants to come back, and then I will go to Councillor Williams because she's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any information on the future plans for Sam and what we can expect it to cover in the future and sort of the direction you want it to take? This might not be the right place for that. But.
What we tend to do is respond to the inquiries that we're getting so that we prioritise that. Actually, I think Liz has just checked it now does do with dead animals, so it would have picked up on the fact that we had a request for a dead animal, and that's now on the web chat. So it's driven by that. I have to say, we did have a planned extension, but LGR sort of means that we're having to be a little bit careful about what we do. City now use SAM for our shared services, our joint planning and waste services, and they like that. But until we know what the new unitary wants to do with its contact centres, we don't really want to be in a position where we're doing anything radically different. So I think what our plan is like to be over the next years is just that slow, steady rollout. As we see things are being asked about, that's what we'll train Sam on, and that, we'll let it be customer driven.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. So two things. I tried to use the web chat bot and surrendered and gave up once. So where is that in our sort of the abandonment factor? Where would my attempt sit in here? I appreciate the web chat is slightly different, but as a councillor, the amount of phone calls I've had because people haven't been able to get through at the council, or they just, I wouldn't say they don't like it, but it's not working for them. I find particularly when older people whose voices actually may not be as strong, they tend to come through because, like I say, they just feel like they're not getting through. But see, Sam would not have responded and answered them, and nor would they have been transferred. They've given up, they've hung up, just as Councillor Biggs was sort of suggesting she had from a resident. Where do those figures lie? How would you categorise it in those two columns, or is there somewhere else where it's categorised?
SAM certainly isn't for everybody. Not everybody is digitally literate, as I've said before. What SAM will do, though, if it doesn't understand what people are saying, it automatically puts people through. So I'm really surprised to hear that there are people trying to get through and SAM isn't automatically putting them through. We do run tests on that. We've not had an issue with that before, but I'll ask the contact centre to test that again tomorrow, because that's specifically part of what we program it to do and that we test regularly. So I'm surprised people aren't getting through. Not had any reports of Sam not recognising elderly people because they've got soft voices, but I'll ask the contact centre if they've had any reports of that. I mean, again, the contact centre, if somebody does come through and speak to them about their experience with Sam and say that it was negative, they feed that through to our digital team so that we can change that. And we've not had a lot of those being fed through. So I'll check with the contact centre if they've had concerns raised that they haven't passed through. But I rather suspect they normally do.
If I
Yes, go on. If Councillor Williams wants to come back, then I'll come back to Councillor
There's
Biggs.
a big flaw in your theory there, not yours, Chair, sorry, the officer's theory. That is, if I'm frustrated with something, am I going to wait to be put through, or am I going to hang up the phone? So saying that if the feedback comes from contact centre, if people have had a negative experience, doesn't necessarily actually get you what you need. What we need is the amount of people that just give up and don't call through.
Yeah, you get that reported on the KPIs. So that was earlier on when it had calls out.
If you're doing
answered.
a report on the effectiveness of SAM, surely one of the things you also need to look at is how many that have gone through SAM, how many have actually gone to a point of completion, and how many have not.
Yeah, but this gives you a report of the ones that have been through to completion, and in the KPI report, you've got the percentage of calls answered.
By separating it, you're simply not giving the whole picture in one place, and therefore things like the issues that we're raising, which I can see has definitely been a landmine that I've trodden on this evening for officers, to get that whole picture, putting it in different places is not effective for the decision-making process.
Yeah, just if I could just come in on that. So do we have that figure?
It's impossible to know the reason why somebody gave up. So what we know is if somebody called and then hung up, that's reported in the KPI. But why they hang up? Was it because they were frustrated with SAM, or they suddenly remembered the answer and that they didn't need to ask the question? If somebody rang on their doorbell, we don't know that. So that's why we report it in the way that we do.
We completely accept that. Obviously, we can't know why people would hang up. Although I think the suggestion is maybe if we get future reports like this, just as a small note, it might be useful just to cross-refer to that, so we don't. If it's in the KPI anyway, it just makes it a bit easier. So I think that will be useful. Sorry, I took my microphone off.
Yeah, no, it was just I'd never rung South Cambridgeshire before that dear event, and I'd never had reason to, and I wonder how many people actually around this table really ever have either. And I think it might be quite fun to have some sort of mystery shopper arrangement with Sam.
We pay a lot of money every year for that.
Do we? Yeah. Right. Well, I might be a mystery shopper occasionally. It might be interesting.
Well, to potentially end on a positive note, I did do that today, and it was actually very good. It did answer my query quite quickly, so Councillor Sebastian. Oh, can you put your make sure your microphone's on?
If I ask Sam a question and I didn't get the correct answer for me, if I leave my phone number on the Sam, will the number transfer to the contact center and call me back? Or?
Yes, it'll put you straight through to the contact centre if you want to go through after your inquiry with Sam. Yeah, also, it can, you mentioned it's got your telephone number. If the inquiry you've got has got a web page that's available, it can even email you the link to the relevant web page if you want it.
Thank you.
Okay. Somebody. Is it Councillor Booth? Yes.
Yeah, it was just a reflection that obviously, as you were saying, Richard, on a positive note, I think the fact that we now have a system that will only continue to learn, that's the thing, is that the thing with AI and machine learning in general is it is always learning and improving. So its ability to answer calls right now is what it is, but that's why I was interested in the reasons why it can't answer some of those calls, because as I say, in theory, whether we have it with LGR or not, we'll have a system that understands South Cambridgeshire specific questions, which I think is quite an exciting thing and a sort of good example of forward thinking and efficiency. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other comments from any members? Councillor Sanders, did you want to say something? Councillor Detta. Can I take Councillor Detta first? Then come to Councillor Sanders.
Yes, I was just going to add on to what Councillor Booth was saying, with also the fact that it can operate out of hours. I think that is something that's really important to know. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant thing that we have.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
I was just going to say thank you to all members for the feedback and so on. From my point of view, there's an interesting question here about as we embrace technology, you also have to embrace risk and finding the right balance in doing so, which I think is what's coming out of the conversation today. So I will take what's been said with me, and I think the conversations that we have going forward, we'll look at all of this in some detail. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think if we're happy, members, the recommendation is that we review the report, make any appropriate comments and suggestions. I think we can all agree by affirmation that we've done that. Agreed? Agreed. Wonderful, thank you very much. Okay, so let's go on to our last substantive item, which is item 10, which is the tenant satisfaction measures annual report, which, if you just allow me to move forward, because we changed the order, is on page 165, at least of the printed agenda pack. So, lead cabinet member is John Batchelor, lead officer is Peter Campbell. I don't know if either Councillor Batchelor or Mr. Campbell would like to make any comments. Peter? Oh, is John?
Yes,
John sorry, John, I can't see your hand up very well, but yes.
Okay.
Councillor Batchelor.
Fine. So this is the annual satisfaction report. So we need to be clear what this is about. This is a statutory requirement from the Registrar of Social Housing. So it's quite different from our own reports. As we've just been seeing, we regularly test satisfaction and so on, a whole range of things ourselves. But this is an annual report by the registrar, which is prescribed, so we have to use their particular questions, and the test is on perception. So most of our reporting is about the satisfaction of people who have actually had used one of our services, whereas here it is a simple matter of what people think about things. So I should bear that in mind. Overall, it shows improvements in many areas. There is still work to be done. There's been a significant increase in complaints. That in itself is not a bad thing as far as the registrar is concerned, because what he would take that as being is that we've actually made it easier for people to complain, making ourselves more accessible. So overall, the performance is quite reasonable. There's more work to be done, and we will be doing it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Batchelor. Did any officers want to add anything? Or no? Okay, so we're happy to open the floor to members for questions, and we've got Councillor Booth.
So, and I take everything you were saying, John, on board. I think, so there may be an answer to this question already, but I think with this and more widely reflecting on some of the KPIs and things we talked about today, I think the geographical performance is something that I'd like to see drawn out a bit more. So when we talk about TSMs, I'm assuming in this instance with this report, it's quite prescriptive about how we present the figures. So we don't have the ability or the need to show it geographically. But in the case of TSM and how we use it as a council, is it possible just to clarify whether we have sort of hotspot mapping and whether that feeds through into how we intervene? You know, in this case, we're talking about TSMs, but obviously I think the point will probably stand for other KPIs as well.
Right. You want me to answer that?
So I think,
Oh,
well, I think Ms. Fletcher
oh,
wants to come in on that one, if that's okay.
yeah,
Or do you want-
fine.
Okay, yeah.
Happy to answer, Chair, if that's okay with you, Councillor Batchelor. I just wanted to add that whilst we have a specific way that we have to report it, and that's what we've reported here in terms of the regulator, the actual detailed report that MEL, the consultants, do for us does dive deeper into some of the detail in terms of the findings. And whilst we don't have the data ourselves, we can definitely ask them to look at different hotspots. If there were specific hotspots, then we would ask them to look at. So, for instance, with the communal areas, that's quite that's one where we want to look at why are the reasons for sort of lower satisfaction levels. So we have gone back to them to ask them to look at actually, is it external or is it internal in terms of communal areas? Are there hotspot areas that actually would be quite a quick win in terms of if there's specific areas that need to be looked at? So yes, we can do that. As a standard, the consultants look at sort of general needs and sheltered housing to see if there's a difference there, and also sort of age groups as well in terms of responses. But we can sort of look at the data in much more granular detail if we need to. And we are also going to be looking at holding a wider briefing session in terms of the overall detail. This, like I say, is almost like a snapshot of that survey, really, that we have to provide to the regulator.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back, Councillor?
Yeah, and I think, as I say, I'm conscious we're supposed to be commenting on the report, but I think that's really useful, so thank you. And I just, as we say, in terms of sort of driving improved performance, I think that hotspot granularity, even if it's just as a council, the way that we process that information is useful. If I think of somewhere like Camborne compared to another village, we are demographically, spatially quite different places. So I think if we, you know, in terms of improving performance, it makes sense to view things on a geographical basis.
Thank you. I just had a quick question, and that's on landlord performance measures, so RP01, page 175 of the printed pack. Proportion of homes that do not meet the decent home standard. 25-26, 3.9%, which seems to be a rise from 24-25, which was 1.1, and a rise also from 23-24. So representing 220 non-decent homes out of 5,605, that did jump out at me, and it seems to have deteriorated. So I was wondering if we could get some further comment on why that might have happened and what steps are being taken to address it.
Okay, so the decent home standard is a government standard, obviously about the decency of our homes. And it looks at a number of elements across all our properties. And it looks at both the age of some of the elements and the condition of those same elements. An element may be something like the bathroom or the kitchen units, etc. And what's happened this year is that a number of properties have fallen out of decency because of the age of the elements. So it's not the condition, that they're in no worse condition, well, marginally worse condition, but not significantly worse than last year. And those works are being, those properties are being prioritised for capital work this year. So they will be brought back out of non-decency.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. What's the time period that the government uses to? Because you said they've fallen outside the time period.
It varies on. It depends on the element. So I think a roof, I think, is 40 years. A kitchen's 15 years. Top of my head, there's a whole, I think there's a range of about 20 elements. What's interesting that the government are revising the decent home standards from next year, I think it is, and the age element is dropped completely. It's purely on condition. So I'm fairly confident that if that new definition was in place now, we'd be, our performance would be even higher than it is now.
So, yeah, thank you. Just a follow-on question from that then, really, and it's a question for the government, maybe not for us. But if they're moving from years to condition, who will assess condition? Will it be the tenants
It will
self-reporting?
be mainly us. If you recall, we did a 100% stock condition survey a few years ago on our housing stock, and that threw out some really valuable information. Since then, and in recognition that a survey every 5 or 10 years is only partially helpful, we've changed that. We've employed our own surveyors to carry out that survey on a rolling basis. So their assessments their inspections will build in assessments of the condition of our stock.
Okay, so I mean, on that rolling basis, so how often would a house be inspected?
We were aiming to do each property every 5 years.
Okay.
But remember that we don't have, so we've got nearly 6,000 properties. They're not 6,000 totally independent, unique properties. They've got elements in common. So it's not unrealistic that if a property on a street or an estate has got a problem, for example, with its roof, that would make us prioritise inspecting the other roofs on that estate to see what failures are. So it's about using the information we have in an intelligent way.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Hobro and Councillor Heather Williams. Nobody else. So should I go to Councillor Hobro?
So this is really a very quick comment, and it's a positive one. When looking through all the figures here, particularly on page 173 and 174, I noticed that although the top line figures, the satisfaction figures, show a mixed picture, the trend in the percentage of people who are very or fairly dissatisfied is consistently that it is going down in practically all of these measures, which doesn't necessarily come across in the colours and direction of the arrows on the right. But I just wanted to mention that I noticed that and to say congratulations on making sure that there are significantly fewer dissatisfied people in our council houses. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it was probably more of a comment than a question. But okay, so Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. I do note that it's going to the Housing Engagement Board this month. It does feel a little bit like it would have been, I appreciate timing's difficult, but it'd been beneficial actually if it had gone to the Housing Engagement Board first. And then, so for those that aren't familiar with it, that's a group which Councillor Batchelor chairs as the portfolio holder, but it has tenants on it, tenant representatives on it. So it's I find very useful insight. So I think in the future, if we can time it so the HEB is beforehand, then that would have actually helped probably with a lot of the questions that members have today, and would have perhaps put some more flesh on things, or indeed we can perhaps invite them to some scrutiny meetings. One thing that I think would be best to elaborate on a little bit more, if possible, or ahead of the HEB meeting, is between page 176 and 177. So we have the top one and bottom one and 176, CHO2, and part 1 and part 2. Can we just elaborate on how we're getting to this point? Thank you, Chair.
I can just jump in just before you answer Councillor Williams' questions, just to pick up the point about tenant involvement. We did discuss that actually as a committee yesterday in our pre-meeting about ways in which we might involve tenants in scrutiny of housing, and I think we all thought in principle it was a good idea, but we'd have to think through how that would work. But I think good suggestion and something that we're thinking about.
Sure, I'll answer the first question about the timing. Unfortunately, because we set a deadline by the regulator, we did, although it would have been better to go to tenants before coming here, unfortunately the timescale we had to speak to the regulator meant it wasn't possible, so that's why we've got this order at this time. We may be able to rearrange it better for future years.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Williams?
Yes, I'll say, and I'll say tenants do, that HEB is to give tenants that time to scrutinise and be involved in policy development, and it is very beneficial, but we have had extraordinary HEB meetings for other things, so I think that probably could have been used in this case, but if we take that away. But also, could I have an answer to my question about more context around the 2 TSM measures that I referenced, Chair?
Yes, sure. Anyone able to? Yes, Julie Fletcher. Yeah.
Thank you. In terms of sort of elaborating more in terms of what we're putting there, just to sort of be clear in terms of what you want, because it's set by the regulator what we have to measure and how we measure it. Is it more to explain what it means, or I'm just not quite clear?
Chair, explain, are there any other reasons why there have been the changes there have? If we look, so 73% in 23-24, now 73.4%, 80.9, now up to 86.9. Where we see the variables, is there any context to South Cambs that you would like to give in relation to the complaints that have gone through the Ombudsman?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think the main issue there, as we've covered previously and in a JET report, it's the denominator. So the number of complaints has increased significantly over that period. But yes, we can certainly draw that out further.
Yeah, Julie Fletcher. Yeah.
May I just add to that? I think we have tried to go through that within the actual text of the report in terms of trying to explain the reason for the increase in the number of complaints, which actually is a national increase we've seen for all social housing landlords, that complaints have doubled in the last year, which so it's not unusual that we've got so many. And I think the knock-on effect of that is in terms of our response rates, we recognise that we need to get better on that, and we have measures in place, such as a dedicated complaints officer we're currently recruiting to. So I thought I had explained that within that report, but if you feel it needs further explanation, then I'm happy to take that away and look at that for HEB.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I just had I haven't got anybody else on the speaker list. I just had one final point myself, which is more of a general point. Doesn't relate specifically to this report, but I noticed in the forward plan for Cabinet, there's quite a lot of housing policies that seem to be in there, like the pets policy, for example. Now, we can't scrutinise everything here, but obviously, you know, if you're a tenant, the pets policy is going to be quite an important, significant thing for you. So I was just wondering, just generally, what is the process for reviewing those policies before they go to Cabinet? I mean, do they go to the Housing Board, for example? Thank you.
Yep, you're happy for me to take that, Chair. Yes, just to say, so we have quite a process to involve our tenant reps within policy development. So we have a specific policy panel. So there's tenant reps that sit on that help us to develop the policy to start with. So they're very much involved at that point. And then we will take that through to the Housing Engagement Board as well, as well as coming through the other processes. So yes, we try and engage as much as we can with them.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, members, so I haven't got anybody else speak on my list, so we're happy to finish up on that one. So it's recommended that we review the report, make any comments or further recommendations as we feel appropriate. The recommendation to Cabinet will be that it notes the tenant satisfaction report. So can we agree by affirmation that we've done all of those things? Agreed? Excellent. Okay, thank you all very much, members. So that is essentially brings us to the end of our substantive reports. We've just got one, well, two items left, but there's one other item worth discussing in maybe some detail, and that's the work programme. So a revised work programme has been circulated to members following the meeting we had last week where we discussed the forward plan. So we've got a extra meeting planned for July to scrutinise the local plan. That will be in advance of the Regulation 19 consultation. Now, the provisional date we've now got for that is the 14th of July, which is unusual. It's a Tuesday. It was suggested to us we'd have the 16th, but the 16th is full council, so obviously can't do that. We suggested the 9th. They've come back with the 14th. So I think that is likely to be the date. The papers apparently can't be prepared for the 9th, so they've suggested the 14th, which will make a slightly busy week for those of us who are on scrutiny, JDMC, and full council but that is the current date, just to note for members. Okay. So that's our next meeting, which is July. Our regular meeting after that would be in September. And I think we have extended, as we agreed last week, an invitation to the Cambridge Growth Company to attend that meeting. I think we'll have a lot to talk about there. And that may take the whole of September's meeting. So we may delay the Q1 performance report and the other things provisionally in September's agenda until October, because I suspect we may want a whole session with the Development Corporation people. Okay, does that sound okay to members? Any other comments that members want to make on the work programme, or are we happy as things stand? Okay, in that case, I think we'll take that as agreed. Okay then, well, thank you very much. That was a slightly long meeting, but thank you all members, and thank you officers, and thank you cabinet members for attending. And the next meeting, the next ordinary meeting will be the 17th of September, but as I said, we are planning to meet in July. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair.